next gen has a live service problem. I feel like this problem is becoming bigger every single year.
Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield, and this week I'm joined by Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Thanks for having me.
And Destin Legare from IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Bam! Thanks for having me, Damon.
And do we have a doozy of a lead topic for you this week? You've probably heard by now, Sony has pulled Concord from sale and is shutting down the servers today, the day this episode goes live on September 6th. That's just
What's really surprising to me is they haven't shut down Suicide Squad. Because, like, if I look at Suicide Squad, it's actually gone up a lot. I guess they must have done an update or something. But it was like, it's floundering around. Yeah, maybe they did an update. It's been floundering around at under 100 players. How are you maintaining a live service game with updates? And it increases your player base by 200. I mean, think about that. Like, you still have an entire development studio and everything about that, and it's like millions of dollars. Like, I don't know why you would do this, by the way. It's such a weird thing. If somebody, if you spam in chat, you get permabanned. It's literally so easy to understand. Some people just don't get it. Yeah, you just instantly I don't even care what you're asking or anything. Anyway, so yes, it's like shadow development.
Weeks after the game was launched, it is one of Sony's big first-party game releases of the year. Not even given a 2-week chance to find its footing. Of course, it did have a very disastrous launch. Steam all-time peak concurrent users sits at 697 players, and I think the day after it was released, so couldn't even crack 700 concurrents on Steam.
Wow.
Analyst tells us it sold probably 25,000 units. At $40 a pop, that comes out to exactly $1 million. Director Ryan Ellis said...
So they only lost 99% of their money.
Many qualities of the experience resonated with players. We also recognize that other aspects of the game and our initial launch didn't land the way we'd intended.
Yeah, it sure did.
So, I don't think there's much point debating why this game failed. I think the reasons are obvious. Hero shooters were exciting in 2016. Concord arrives very late to the party with no popular IP attached to it, like Marvel Rivals. Concord's a very generic name. Doesn't tell anything about the game, anyone about the game. People didn't like the characters in this game, and that's kind of important in a hero shooter. The heroes are supposed to be really cool and likable. The curious might have tried it out.
By the way, none of those reasons, other than the heroes being bad, are valid. And the immediate thing that disproves that is Deadlock. Deadlock follows every single other one of those things that he said was a reason why the game failed. Deadlock has all of those things. It's a random name. It's a hero shooter. It wasn't marketed. Like, it's just not true. But the character's looking stupid, yeah, definitely.
We were free to play, but they slapped a price on it. And finally, I think Sony did very little marketing for this game. It was fully revealed in May.
Valve did anti-marketing for Deadlock. Nope, it had nothing to do with it.
This year, but then just sort of was quietly released during Gamescom.
Literally closed alpha.
The biggest game show of the year, where Sony didn't even have a booth. I'm not in marketing.
Jeez.
I think the obvious choice would be maybe Sony might want to have had this game there, get lots of people playing it, get lots of people excited the week that was going to be out. But who am I? I'm not a marketer for Sony. So I think it's more interesting to discuss why Sony is abandoning this game so soon, not even really giving it a chance to find its footing. Max.
Because, well, it makes sense. It totally makes sense, because this is what they should do. Like, you should, like, I mean, at a certain point, it's better to just cut your losses. And that's what I said about Suicide Squad. I'm shocked that they haven't already canceled the game.
I start with you. What happened here?
The big question is, who was this game for? And I think the Overwatch comparison is an obvious one.
Yeah.
The general sort of Guardians of the Galaxy of it all was kind of something that jumped out at me. what's funny is to look back at the initial reveal for this game. The very first glimpse we got of it was this completely sort of ambiguous, nebulous, like literally in a nebula, this ship traveling through space. We had no idea what this game was. We heard it was a first-person shooter of some variety, something multiplayer flavored. And the thing that people were talking about for the better part of a year about this game, following its announcement, was the CGI cheeseburger that was shown in the trailer, which is quite a literal nothing burger, as it turns out. Then we got this sort of the big reveal of the
cheeseburger,
the cinematic narrative cutscenes that were going to be holding this thing together.
What are you talking about?
Which, admittedly looked pretty slick. And then that immediately tossed into gameplay that really, I think...
Yeah, it's crazy how good this looks. I mean, if you actually just like take a second and look at the quality of this looks really good. Looks sick, yeah.
That really, I think, left a lot of people cold. And again, hero shooters were the new hotness back in 2016 when this game was early in development. I think they spent something like, 8 years making this thing?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, back then that was also there was one Guardians of the Galaxy movie out, and then there was another one that people were looking forward to, and now we are like, that team has disbanded in the MCU. Like, we're so far beyond that. And anybody who is actually like hankering for a Guardians of the Galaxy game, we got one of those in like 2018.
That's great.
And then if you want to play a new hero shooter featuring Marvel characters, there's one coming out in December.
Marvel
Rivals is right around the corner. So it's just...
A lot of people say that game is good.
It just feels like the answer to a question that nobody asked, aside from, I don't know, maybe some VCs or board members. It very much looks like a product for the sake of being a product. And it sucks because clearly a lot of people worked really hard on it. It is definitely polished. I saw a photo on Reddit that people were being a little bit snarky of, which is a screen cap of the IGN review that Travis Northup did, giving it a 7, saying it was good. That was never the issue. It's not the fact that it's a broken game or an inherently bad game. It's just that a game that nobody really wants to play. And when it is
then how is, if it's a game that nobody really wants to play, then how is it good? What do you think people need reviews for? People look for reviews in order to inform purchase decisions. Like, what?
Strictly multiplayer game, not having people to play it is kind of a big issue. But that
wasn't the reason why.
It's a bigger problem outside of the game itself. That's sort of a societal infrastructure type of problem. And it's funny because, Sony's clearly been betting really big on live service games. We heard at one point that they had, I think, 12 of them in development.
That's
We've
a
since
lot.
heard that they've halved that. They had a huge win earlier this year with Helldivers, which up until...
Well, they've turned that into a huge L. Apparently now they're adding stratagems into the game, which are like kind of like special effect, like weapons, like calling in like an airstrike and shit. They're adding things into the game that you have to pay money for. So like Helldivers has already entered the of course they are. Yeah, Helldivers, that's not true. You think it's not true? It's bullshit? I don't know. That's not what people were saying. Either way, it's death spiraling.
The halfway point of the year,
Gameplay's too
at least
repetitive.
last I checked, was the best-selling game of the year, period. So clearly, live service isn't inherently the issue here. It's more just making games that people actually want to play. And
Imagine
you can look
that.
at this game for 3 seconds and you see how expensive it is. It is clearly a very polished, even if you hate the character designs, like a lot of work went into this game. It looks like it's been cooking.
I mean, you can't...
even if you hate the character designs, like a lot of work.
You can't show me that fire and tell me a lot of work went into the game. Like the CGI trailers looked really good, but the gameplay itself was just like, it was average, right? I mean, there's nothing that's like really shocking or, like noteworthy about this at all.
Into this game, it looks like it's been cooking for the better part of a decade. But then it's also, you look at I don't know, the games that blow up on Steam. You look at something like Pal World, like AAA polish is not necessarily the thing that gets people gravitating towards games.
Well, it wasn't polished. That's the problem, is that like people think that AAA polish means that the game has a good trailer. No, it's that the effects and the gameplay is extremely polished, not that it has good graphics.
There's frequently runaway hits on Steams that are, arguably like games as a service that are kind of janky, and that doesn't matter if people are having a good time.
Exactly.
This just kind of feels like, that final paper that you spent all night working on. You really just wanted to get everything perfect, get it totally right, and then you wound up not turning it in on time and failing the class. So, yeah, big flop for Sony. Not surprising, kind of looking at the timeline of events here. Skipping Gamescom again, that was sort of a big canary in a coal mine moment.
I think that Sony, I think that one of the big reasons why the PlayStation 5 Pro, I bet they edited and had to change the trailer because Concord was one of the flagship games that the PS5 Pro was supposed to like empower. I think that's what happened.
The fact that Sony didn't even decide to get this in front of people. So, yeah, it's sad. And I hope that it also kind of serves as a warning because...
I don't think that it's sad. I think the market rejecting a bad product isn't sad at all. I feel bad for the people that lost their jobs on a personal level. But the reality is that when you make a bad product and you go into a free market, guess what? You fail.
See so many games pop
That's
up
natural
as live
selection.
service projects and then quickly just keel over and die, or we start sort of hearing the beginnings of their death rattle, so to speak. Foam Stars was a big PS5 and PC and PS4 game that launched earlier this year, and again, it's a games as a service. It is a game. It is sort of like Splatoon, but it's foamy. And come on in, everybody, and check it out and play it. And that just recently flipped the switch to free to play because people, I'm guessing, weren't paying money to buy it and to play it. Yeah. So,
well, that's what happens with any game. Like this Foam Stars, I remember seeing this game, and this game reminded me a lot of the PlayStation games that they tried to make in order to copy Nintendo, but they couldn't do it the right way. And I used to always meme on Sony about this because they would try to be Nintendo and they couldn't do it, but they actually did it. They did it with Astrobot. The game seems to be incredibly good. Everybody seems to like the game. So they finally did make a Nintendo game. But this just wasn't it.
Yeah, as you say, in this case, it doesn't seem to be an issue of quality because we did give it a 7 out of 10, and I should point out that is right in line.
Well, so you guys gave it a 7. Why? How do you make that decision? Because like you said you gave it a 7, and like I can say that for me personally, Space Marine 2 was like an 8. It was an 8. But I think that if you're a Warhammer fan, it's a 10. So every review is speculation. Every review is subjective. So when I see people talking about like, oh, well, our 7 made sense, why does it make sense? How is it possible? Because like, if you have review criteria that results in a game with AAA funding and AAA design that doesn't even get 1,000 players, if that can result in a 7, you clearly have a foundational problem with the way that you're reviewing games. Like the criteria that you're using and the way that you review these games is very clearly flawed. Or there wouldn't be such a discrepancy. It's not even a question.
To be an issue of quality because we did give it a 7 out of 10, and I should point out
quality is not the level of CGI in the trailer. Quality is the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's the character design. It's the graphics of the game. It's the dynamic experiences that you have while playing. Quality? What do you mean by quality? What does quality even mean?
that is right in line with all other reviewers. It has a 67 on Metacritic.
All other reviewers. That's the problem. That's the whole problem. Yes.
So basically everyone was giving this about a 7. Not a bad game. It's just a game, like Max pointed out, just a game that nobody was asking for, nobody was looking for, and didn't have an audience to actually release out to.
Except for Deadlock had the exact category, like every categorical distinction that was created for Concord that was being explained as the reason why it wasn't successful is applicable to Deadlock. It's just not true under any sort of logical examination. How do you repeat something that's so evidently provably false? It's unbelievable to me. Like, just, I don't know what to say.
Destin, Xbox is no stranger to, stepping on rakes, as Ryan McCaffrey likes to say. What was sort of your reaction to this unprecedented news earlier this week?
I have no idea who this game was ever made for. You just look at it, and right away, the characters feel bland, boring, and derivative.
He's right.
Everybody was calling it a Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff from the first trailer revealing the characters. They did not like the interaction between the characters. So I'm left wondering, like, was there ever focus testing done on this? Were they getting positive reinforcement? Because I didn't see any positivity toward it from the initial trailer. So once you launch the game and you see their version of Drax, and we get a peek at the cinematics with these characters we have no connection to, we don't understand the relationship. And I saw somebody online compare it to jumping into season 3 of a television show, and you're just expected to have some connection to whoever these characters are supposed to be, and you just don't. So it fails on a storytelling perspective, and I actually
the characters aren't relatable or interesting. Like the Overwatch characters, you're jumping into season 3, right? Overwatch is built off of something that isn't even happening anymore. Like Overwatch. They were on a team together, now they're not anymore. That's the entire foundation of the story. So, again, this is not a difference. It's about how it's told.
Really agree with Travis Northup's review completely. I think that the gameplay feels very slow, and I think the more you play and you get matched with, stacked teams and such, at least as a solo player, it becomes much less fun. In addition, there are modes where they tried something new, and it would lock you completely out of using a character a second time, trying to shake up the sandbox. But you know what I don't like being told to do by a video game? Not play as my favorite character. So, there were just so many strange decisions made with Concord that I don't understand. But at the end of the day, everybody basically said, we don't want to pay $40 to play this. And they didn't. And that's the only thing you can really do as a consumer, not buy things that aren't of interest to you.
That's right.
It's not the first game to stumble out the gate, although, it definitely has maybe the biggest stumble. But, I think of other games that have had comebacks, like No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk.
The biggest stumble so far. They can always outdo themselves. Yeah, no, it can get worse. It can always keep getting worse.
Final Fantasy 14. I think in these cases, the developers put their heads down and they just quietly get to work improving their game. And after, eventually, after some period of time, the game is in a good place and is sort of welcomed again by its community. But like here, Sony is.
What community?
Well, I'm just saying.
There is no community.
Okay.
It capped off. It's like under
community?
700 players on Steam. Clearly, this is not resonating with people.
Shit.
I don't see a world where this game goes offline, they put their heads down, and they come back, and everybody's like, oh my god, I love Concord all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like the
Bro, this guy's completely based. Abso-fucking-lutely. Yeah, this is not, everybody's just gonna, oh yeah, never mind, we like it now. So ridiculous. The right guy's just crushing their dreams. Bro, he's the reality check.
people who were willing to buy the game have made their voices clear and said, I'm not going to.
Yeah. No, I mean, to No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy 14, all of these were things that people wanted. These were games that were, if anything, they underdelivered, or they launched in a rough state. But the idea of
that's also a really good point, is that Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky released to a massive amount of fanfare and excitement because people really liked No Man's Sky, people liked what it could be, and Cyberpunk, people liked what it could be. Nobody liked what Concord could be. That's the big difference too. Yeah, you're totally right.
I don't know, the people who made The Witcher doing a big open world futuristic game, or a Final Fantasy MMO. These are like things that are like, okay, I'm in. What is Concord? Like, who is this again? Who is this for? And even if it was just try to kind of loop people in the most basic, just the tiniest bit of curiosity, $40 is going to prevent that. And I mean, when Overwatch has gone free to play, when everything else is free to play, it's just there's no.
It has nothing to do with it as well. That has literally zero to do with it. Helldivers 2 wasn't free to play and it was massively popular. It was the same price as Concord. A game being free to play makes it easier for people to stay in the game. But what you saw with, and also Concord had a free beta weekend. So if the game being free was the reason why people weren't buying it, or sorry, the game being paid was the reason why people weren't buying it, then you could logically assume that when the game was paid, when the game was free, there would have been a lot of people playing it, right? Logically. That's not what happened. It's that simple.
There's barely any pull to draw people in, and there's a big, huge paywall right in front of them actually checking it out of morbid curiosity.
I mean, nothing to do with it, but it was not the causal factor.
Had this even launched as just a perk on PlayStation Plus, which again, Sony has a subscription service. It seems like maybe that could
a lot of people subscribe to it too. I didn't even know this.
A bunch of great games as a service have actually gotten a good boost from PlayStation Plus. Rocket League and Fall Guys both launched as PlayStation Plus games, and those are the kind of games that if you were charging $40 for them or $20 for them, with no
Are we good? I don't know why that happens. It's been about at the same time every single day, too. Yesterday I was at 3. Today it's at 2:43. I wonder why that happens.
Opportunity to check them out, just kind of like, I'll take it for a spin. I don't see those games ever having taken off, but they were able to kind of attract a active player base because there was an easy way to get on board, an easy way to check it out.
Yeah, sure.
You look at another big competitor to Concord is Apex Legends, and that
free
when it
game
dropped, it came out of nowhere, which again just made a big kind of splash on its own. And again, it was from a reputable studio, it's from Respawn. So people are like, what did you hear about Apex Legends? I don't know. What's that? Oh, it's like a battle royale, but it's in the
it's also that Apex came out because a lot of people were tired of Fortnite. They didn't like building, and people didn't want to play PUBG because the game was bad. So people played Apex because the game was really good. So yeah, I mean, that's the real reason. Like, I mean, it's like it's super sweat. Yeah, but like when it came out, Apex was like the fucking game, man.
Titanfall universe.
It was huge.
Cool.
Valve also released Deadlock, which is invite only, and it's behind a lock system to get in. And last I checked, it had like 90,000 concurrents, putting it regularly in the top 10 games on SteamDB. So you have people like Valve also entering this market, and guess what? That game's free. So that's what you're up against. And when you come out and you're like, well, you got to pay $40 to play this one. Why?
Yeah. No, there's a hubris.
People didn't even play the game when it was free for the beta weekend. No, not a factor. You literally have a control case of that happening.
Sony's part, which we see on a pretty regular basis, where it's almost like somebody up there was just expecting people to care. Someone they were like, oh yeah, there's a brand new first party PlayStation 5 multiplayer game. It's coming out in August. $40. But like,
wow,
that's not enough to move the needle. That's not going to get people excited or on board. That's not I don't know. There's no there. Meanwhile, Valve being like, we put out a new game. Everyone loses their mind because Valve doesn't put out a new game ever so often. They don't do that much. So something to care about.
It could be that in this case, Sony just could not afford to keep this game running with the player count so low, because this is Firewalk Studios. It's their first game. They were formed in 2018, so that's why the math about it being in development for 8 years doesn't really add up. It would have had to start in 2016, but the studio was founded in 2018. Whatever.
Who knows?
This is their first game, so they've had no money coming in, no revenue except for whatever investment capital they had, and then of course Sony bought them last year. So like this is it. They've got no money coming in, and it may just be that.
Well, the reality too is that Sony probably this is my conspiracy theory, is that the previous CEO of Sony was forced out because of bad decisions that he made, and those bad decisions now are kind of they're finally coming to light, and I think that's exactly what happened. I think his name is Jim Ryan or something like that, and. as soon as this game came out and it wasn't successful and people didn't like it, then they just immediately pulled the plug because I think they knew that it wasn't going to be successful. The guys who nobody wanted classic said nobody wanted classic games. Yeah, I think that's what happened. And so like they saw that this guy tried to make a play for live service and he made a number of like pretty bad mistakes with games that are probably going to be coming out in the next year or so. And so they got rid of him ahead of time. The guy wanted to double down his games as a service. Yeah, exactly. Which is just like, the problem is that most people that play games as a service are people that are like heavily invested into like one specific game. And I feel like also, maybe this is like just total bullshit, but I feel like a lot of the people that play games as a service are people that don't really have a lot of consoles. Like they're either PC gamers or mobile gamers. I feel like console games have never really been like games as a service focused. But I could be wrong about that. I'm just like, I'm trying to just think, I'm thinking out loud kind of.
Sony can't afford to keep it running because Guha Bella from Velen Studios, they made Knockout City, which is, they know something about, launching a live service game and then having some issues with it. He told GamesIndustry.biz that a 50-person team would amount to about $500,000 a month just in labor costs. Based on that, he estimates a $20 game would need to sell
50-person team. I'm surprised it's not more.
$1,000 a month to match this.
Yeah.
Concord had a $40 price tag, and Firewalk Studios has at least 150 staff.
Wow.
So it could just be that Sony just could not
150
afford
people
to keep this game running.
Yeah, of course not. I mean, they made $1 million.
Well, I think that Sony could afford to keep it running. They absolutely could. They've got billions of dollars probably. It's just that why would they do that? Why are you keeping this on life support just just so people can make videos about how bad your game is? It just makes you look bad. Let's be real.
At least 100 million.
On the low end.
Like some people are saying 200 million plus they purchased the studio to make this product. And I just don't think there's any salvaging it. It's just too low of a retention rate, and I don't see how you get players interested in this. The fact of the matter is Concord is not cool to play or have any interaction with, and that's how people feel about it.
So what?
We've seen this.
Oh, go ahead, Max.
I was going to say, do you remember Paragon, the sort of MOBA-style hero shooter that Epic put out, and then subsequently said, never mind, and then I think issued refunds. And I think the cool thing they did there was they made the assets free for people to use in Unreal.
They totally gave up. They even gave away. Bro, they're like giving away the organs. You can have the liver, you can have the heart, right? They didn't just kill the game, they're giving away the organs of it. Oh my god, I love it. Is it, all assets are free cents? That's amazing.
Or whatever. But yeah, like that was there. I don't think there was any, ill will towards that game. It just didn't attract a player base.
Yeah,
and again,
sure.
like Epic has a little bit of, they got a cushion to fall back on. They're not, they're not really hurting there. The people are, as long as people are using Unreal, that's fine. And, clearly they got back on their feet with Fortnite after that. But this just strikes me as Sony just pulling the ripcord as hard as possible because they are already in the hole with this game and it's coming out just not even keeping itself afloat. This thing sunk like a brick. And yeah, I'm wondering if this is, you can give a game like this the benefit of the doubt. Maybe we'll see it reemerge as some kind of a free-to-play thing, but they're not
going to, because like the problem is that the market has already made up their mind that Concord is bad. So how could a bad game be good? Doesn't make sense. Because if the game's bad, then why would people play the game? If they re-release the game, it's still going to be bad because people think that it's bad. That's it. The ship sunk? Yeah, it's sunk, bro. Like, it's done. You're not resuscitating this. You can't even ship a Theseus this. Like, this, it's done. Every board is gone.
Much just negativity surrounding it. The reputation this game has is as one of the biggest failures in video game history, and it's not even like there's room for a redemption arc. Like it's again, No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk, these are things that people desperately wanted. And
That's right.
if anything, they were victims of really high expectations that came back to bite them. And in this case, the product reveal was a nothing burger flying through space. Like, who would want this? So I'm thinking this is going to be more one of those David Zaslav style write-offs. But yeah, again, I wanted to see Coyote versus Acme. I didn't want to play Concord. I didn't care. I don't, no, there's one thing I want to touch on about this game, and it just strikes me as just a kind of incongruous product. Aside from the fact that it's either generic or the style, the designs aren't for everybody. The pairing of a fast-paced or medium-paced multiplayer shooter with weekly narrative cutscenes are just antithetical. Like the people who are...
I don't know if that's true. I think if they did that for Overwatch, I'd watch it every single week. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think that a lot of other games, and this is really where the issue is, right? Is that a lot of these problems, like if you applied them to other video games, would not be problems. Sometimes just inside of some game's DNA, it's bad. And also a big thing, and this is a huge component, is audience reception. And a lot of people don't like really considering this because it's kind of stupid and in a way unfair. But the truth is that if an audience sees a game and they kind of reject the game and they're not interested in it, that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter whether you think the product is good or not, because you always have for example, game developers or journalists or people telling you oh, this is really good. You're not going to be able to convince a consumer to do something that they don't want to do. And once the market has decided that something is bad, then it begins a feedback loop. And I think the feedback loop is like this. It's like Helldivers 2 came out, it was really popular. So people started making videos about how popular it was. And then other people started playing it because they were hearing about Helldivers 2. This seems awesome. Yeah, let's go try this game out, right? And so it's kind of like a snowball effect that either happens in a good way or a bad way. And so what happens with, for example, Palworld is Palworld came out to early access. At the beginning, it wasn't super popular. It built up that momentum, and then it got more and more popular as more and more people played it. Same as what happened with Fortnite. So the issue is that if you have a bad first impression with a market, what ends up happening is that first impression shades the entire experience that your game is going to have for probably its entire lifespan. And you can look at examples like No Man's Sky, or you can look at Cyberpunk 2077. But I think with, for example, Cyberpunk 2077, it's not that the game was bad, it's that it was really buggy and it didn't work properly. The fundamental game was good, it's just that nothing worked in the game, which is a very, very big difference, right? Because you can fix a game that's broken, but you can't fix a game that's bad. That's the difference. It was an unfinished product. Yeah, you can finish an unfinished product. You can't fix a bad product. Very big difference. And I think with No Man's Sky, this is, again, a massive survivorship bias. Think about how many other games, look at New World, for example. New World is releasing the new, Return or, Guardians of Eternum or something like that patch, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to try it out. But what my expectation is that New World is going to have the same problems it did when it launched. That's what's going to happen. We're just playing the beta. Yeah, well, and the beta is going to be great because the problems that the game had didn't manifest themselves until late leveling, and then in end game. Those are the problems with New World. The early new player experience for New World was always great.
After narrative storytelling and beautifully polished cutscenes, speaking as one of those people, you play single player games.
Yeah.
Multiplayer, you want rock solid gameplay. You want something fast paced. You don't want something getting in the way, stopping you down to tell you, hold your hand and tell you a story. The Overwatch vignettes, I could be wrong, but I feel like those kind of came after the fact. There were a handful of them floating around, but that game launched with a kind of a cool starter pack of action figures. I think it was 12 people on the roster at first, and they gradually trickled out these little,
I think it was more.
These little shorts, giving you a little bit more context. But it was always gameplay first, story second. And in this case, this was one of the big selling points, was we're going to get a new, highly polished cutscene every week. Like, dude, Fortnite...
He brings up a really good point with this, and I think the way he's describing it actually makes a lot of sense, where the company is viewing the cutscene as a value add, whereas the players don't care about the cutscenes if the game is bad. It's like the cutscenes can only be sprinkles on a cupcake, but if there's no cupcake, the sprinkles don't matter. I think, yeah, that's a really good point.
Doesn't even do that. Fortnite does like a new cutscene every like 4 months or something. They do that with a season pass. This is no.
Yeah, and when we did get those cutscenes, the writing was, I'll just say, profoundly bad. It was just not interesting or engaging.
Well, it's made by weird losers that think that they should give a robot pronouns. What do you expect? I mean, it's not like... Of course it's going to be bad. Yeah, I mean, that's...
whatsoever. You have no idea who the characters are. There's no reason to latch on to any of them, and they don't really give you a reason to appreciate
it's not a
who they are
robot,
as
just a
individuals
bin.
in the game. So they even failed with that.
Destin, how do we compare this to Redfall? Maybe that's probably the most high-profile, disaster release for Xbox.
Redfall, I think, is different because Redfall did not function properly. So Redfall was both things, right? So like Cyberpunk was a great game that didn't function well, and Concord was a bad game that functioned well. Redfall was a bad game that didn't function well. So even if they had fixed all of the bugs in Redfall, the game would have still been garbage.
In recent years.
That's what I think.
Concord actually reviewed a little bit better than Redfall. It has a 64 on OpenCritic as opposed to 57 for Redfall. But Redfall's still here, even though Arcane Austin has unfortunately been shut down. You can still play Redfall today.
Well,
and it's
wait a second. Like, so if I look at Metacritic, and I look at Redfall, it doesn't have it. Wait, let me listen to this again.
Than Redfall. It has a 64 on OpenCritic as opposed. Concord actually reviewed a little bit better than Redfall. It has a 64 on Open.
Concord reviewed better than Redfall. No, it didn't. Redfall, like Concord has a 1.8 and Redfall had a 3.5. OpenCritic. This is just... What he's saying is that this game reviewed well because people that are reviewers gave it good reviews. As if that means that it matters. The people that are giving it good reviews do not have any sort of unique authority or accuracy about whether a game is good or not. And very clearly, the criteria that the game is being graded on does not resonate with an audience. Now, I want to go ahead and go back to Metacritic. Because if you look at OpenCritic collects review data from hundreds of online publications, blogs, and channels and compiles it onto one page. So this is not user reviews. These are just all reviews that are done by people that are journalists and are inside of the industry. So you're making an appeal to the authority of the people inside of the industry to draw an equivalency between two games when, in fact, neither of those people clearly speak for what the audiences care about, because the user score for these games is extremely low. It massively deviates from what the actual critics are scoring it. And I think that's a huge fucking problem. You should never grade a game or look at a game and be like, well, this is this rated this low or this high. And also, by the way, if you have a situation where you are consistently giving reviews that are massively deviating from what the, like, well, let's take a step back here. what purpose does a review serve? What is the purpose of the review? Why do you have a review? It's to inform people, right? Yes, it is to inform people. The only people that are going to look at reviews are prospective customers who will be deciding whether they are going to buy a product or not. Is that accurate? Like that's the reason why people look at reviews. So fundamentally, if a review deviates from what users think the game is, the review is wrong because the review is done with the intent of informing the user. So to the extent that a review deviates from what the user perceives the game to be, that is an automatic categorical failure of the review. So whatever criteria you're using is bad. That's just the truth. The review is worthless then. Exactly. So this is an appeal to authority because you are using the authority of these different critics and these game reviewers as if this is somehow meant to be a barometer on anything, when in fact it is not. And in fact, it's the opposite. There's no there's no gatekeeping, right? Like who can be a reviewer and who can't be a reviewer. There's not like you have to be a scientist, right? You work at NASA, you have to have a degree or something like that. No, you're just a game reviewer. Like that's it. There's no qualification for this. So you can't appeal to the authority of game reviewers and then use it as a referential foundation to say that Redfall is similar to Concord. Or that Redfall is or Concord is good, because those reviews don't have any validity to begin with. I just am I crazy, guys? Am I crazy? Like I feel like this is just such a silly thing to look at.
Maybe that's probably the most high-profile, disaster release for Xbox in recent years. Concord actually reviewed a little bit better than Redfall. It has a 64 on Open
Critic
as opposed to 57 for
reviews.
Redfall. But Redfall's still here, even though Arcane Austin has unfortunately been shut down. You can still play Redfall today, and it's actually in better shape than it was because, like I said, the developers just quietly worked on it and they updated it, and there was even a final update that provided that offline mode. This is great B-roll, by the way, that we're seeing right here.
I feel like this guy's trying to do his best job. He's trying to do as well as he can, trying to defend IGN giving review scores that clearly don't reflect what the customer base wants. I think that's what he's doing. He's trying to justify why these reviews are bad by saying that other people also gave bad reviews.
Yeah, I mean, Redfall was equally problematic. It's a game that came out that I'm not sure people wanted from Arcane Austin, which no longer exists, and we saw what happened with Arcane Austin, unfortunately. And I do wonder where this leaves.
It's not unfortunate. Like, it is in a way, but like, it's just the free market speaking. If you release a game, it's the same as a streamer. Like, there are plenty of streamers that stream like all day and they have 2 viewers. That's the way it goes. That's how it is.
Development studio, Firewalk, which is now part of the PlayStation family. As
somebody says, I think you're wrong in attaching any weight to user scores that have no legitimacy, i.e. anyone, not even an actual player of the game can score it is wrong. I think that you bring up one good point and everything else you said was retarded. I do think that you should have to own a video game in order to give it a score. I agree with that. Everything else is stupid.
As we've recently seen
Steam
another
does it right,
failure with Suicide Squad, and how WB has decided to move forward with that. So
yeah,
it's just really, really unfortunate that these games are coming out and they're trying to break into new genres, but they're doing so in a way that doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work for the studios who are making those games, and it doesn't resonate with players. And it's
the game Redfall, like, I'm sorry, but if you're developing a video game and you have people clipping through the floor and like as many bugs as Redfall had, I think it's completely unfair to say that it's not the developer's fault that that happened. Xbox didn't make them release a game where players clip through floors. That's just bad design. If it was a single player, it still would have been bad design. It's got nothing to do with whether it was live service or not. It was just bad.
It's disastrous for these companies. So, like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't understand how this ever got greenlit, how this got past focus testing, and how nobody just said, hey, I don't like this.
Well, I don't know what this means for Firewalk Studios.
I think that what happens is that, and like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation like this, but like you get a lot of people in one room together and they just start agreeing with each other so hard that then they just convince themselves that a bad idea is a good idea or that a good idea is a bad idea. Yeah, like this happens a lot, right? And so, yeah, have you guys seen this happen or silent? And then, yeah, like nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. It's like toxic positivity. Yeah, exactly. It's a huge issue.
You know, like I said, was their only game. I think it's probably inevitable that we'll be hearing about layoffs at some point in the future, which is very unfortunate. I'll be very sorry to hear about that. But I just don't really see what Firewalk Studios is going to be doing in place of Concord. But Matt,
and they have the secret level short to look forward to, which will feature Concord.
Exactly. This is the show. This is the Love, Death, and Robots anthology show. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what really sucks about this is the people who made the decision to make this game what it was are the ones who are way above the pay grade of the people who actually made the game, who are going to get laid off. And that sucks. It's the same deal with Redfall. It's the same deal with Suicide Squad. And in both those cases, I don't know. I was like, hey, what if...
I don't like this narrative that the only people that are making bad decisions are the people that are at the top. I think that it's totally like inside of every organization that I've ever been part of that is comprised of human beings, failures are owned like down the line. Like, I'm sure that there will be collateral damage of people that tried to do their best, but it wasn't good enough. Sure. But I don't like this new narrative that like people are creating in gaming that every single bad thing that happens is because of executives, and it's impossible for somebody who's a developer or a coder to just be bad at their job and be shitty. I think that it's probably like there are problems all the way down and up the ladder. Now, at the end of the day, and this is very important, is that the people that are in leadership take accountability for those mistakes, and oftentimes they created a foundation in which those mistakes happen. But to just completely say it's all the people at the top that are making all the mistakes and everybody that worked on the game did their best, no, I think that's everything that I know about human nature tells me that's not true. Yeah.
If the people who made Dishonored made a vampire game that you can play with your friends. Okay, cool. That's a neat idea. Suicide Squad. Whatever. Yeah, Rocksteady wants to try their hand at it. Again, there's some semblance of like a kernel of a good idea there. In this case, I don't know what the initial appeal was aside from just trying to cash in on the most lucrative looking games as a service, live service model that was the hot thing 6-7 years ago.
I know. I mean, Sony,
when they started making the game.
Firewalk just last April, I believe. Someone at Sony looked at this and said, yes, we will pay money for Concord and release it next summer.
Well,
but Max, on the flip side of all this bad news for Sony, we should mention that Astrobot is out now, and it's just fantastic.
Astrobot's killer.
It got 9 out of 10 from IGN.
Please, yeah, and if you want to take it for a spin and you haven't, just load up Astro's Playroom. There's your free-to-play demo of what that game is like, because it's just that, but for 4 times as long.
Oh yeah,
and PlayStation does deserve props for offering full refunds for Concord and taking it offline and just saying.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, PlayStation earned a lot of respect, in my opinion, for it's like, this is bad. Just give people their money back and say, "Oops, sorry, it won't happen again." Because like it ensures a lot of trust in Sony that if a product comes out and it's very bad, that you won't end up being out $40. Yeah, they're basically buying goodwill, which, like, to be honest, is a good decision. right? They've already lost 99% of their money. You might as well lose 100% at that point. It's basically, is the reputational hit worth that much money? Absolutely not.
We're going to give you your money back. We're going to eat this one and move forward however we need to.
Crazy times. I've been covering this business for a long time. I can't, like I said, I think this is an unprecedented move to pull a huge first-party game with such short amount of time actually being available on the market.
It happens with gacha games kind of regularly, by the way. Gacha games go EOS, end of service. That is when all of your waifus are, they go into the void.
Let's revisit the poll from last episode.
Not
You were
that
talking about all
fast.
these PlayStation
Usually
5
not.
Pro leaks. We asked the audience, what are you willing to pay for a truly next-gen PS5 Pro? And 63% of you are willing to pay
It's not. Man, shut the fuck up with that shit. Man, no, I don't want this shit. Nope.
nothing, not interested
Willing
in
to pay
a
nothing
PS5
for
Pro.
it. Great.
Which is a little bit interesting because we've been talking about who, no one was asking for Concord. Sony went ahead and put Concord out. I don't know, Max, is Sony going to put out a PS5 Pro even though no one seems to want that?
What if I told you that the PS5 Pro could run Concord at 8K, 120 frames? Oh, never mind.
Guaranteed they had that in the presentation. That's what's so fucking funny to me. There could have been an entire 5-minute segment dedicated to how the PS5 Pro takes Concord to the next level.
Sorry, Concord's offline. I don't know who the PS5 Pro is for either. So I would love to be wowed, blown away.
Well, it's so you can play games that were from 2013 that were remade in 2023 with a slightly higher resolution and the windows look different. And it's only $700. Well, unless you want to buy a disc drive, then it's more.
Also, again, it's that good old PS3 era Sony hubris.
Yep.
It's for people buying.
Oh, fuck that. I don't believe that either. PS3 offered a Blu-ray player, and if you add in the value of a Blu-ray player inside of the value of the console, the PS3 had a tremendous value. It had a tremendous value, huge value. Blu-ray players back then themselves, just by themselves, were selling for what, $200, $300, $400? It could have even been more. PS day one was $600. Yeah, but add in the Blu-ray player that it has, and that's it. Blu-ray was half the price. Yeah, exactly. Not everybody used Blu-ray then. No, they didn't. No, and but I think that Sony made a good decision by doing it because it's exactly what they did with the PS2, and even the PS1 could play music CDs, which was unique to it at the time in '96 or whenever.
Playing GTA 6 in their console at the same time. That's what it's for.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. People who have been holding out for this long. 28% would be willing to spend $550 to $600.
Damn.
5% would be willing to pay $650 to $700, and 3.4% claim they would pay upwards of $700 for a PS5 Pro. Herman Hulse, is that you? Is that you, Shuhei, voting in this poll? Here is a poll to vote on for next episode. What is your favorite type of live service game? This is a more fun question to talk about. The Battle Royale, like Fortnite style, MOBAs like Dota 2, sandbox games like GTA Online, MMOs like World of Warcraft, card games like Marvel Snap or some other form of live service. Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode
It's not categorical. It depends on the game. Yeah.
goes live, and we'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Destin. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes in our Los Angeles office and studio here to making this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more on the latest gaming hardware news. We'll see you then.
Yeah, I mean, there were some things they said that I agreed with, but I really think that they're off base by using other critic reviews as a performance indicator for games. Because again, reviews only serve to help the customer make an informed decision on their purchase. What do you think people are watching a review for? There's the video right there. Give it a like. I mean, I'm glad IGN makes videos like this, even though sometimes I disagree with them, because it's a good conversation point. And good Good take. That's the thing, is like, so if you're giving a review and people don't agree with the review, then you've got a problem. It's literally that simple. IGN has zero credibility. Well, it's not that IGN does or doesn't have credibility. It's that a critic score. So like basically, if you have two numbers, one number is a 7, the other one, or a 6.2, the other one's 1.8. The user score is always right. The critic score is not right if it doesn't reflect the user score. The user score is still right even if it doesn't reflect the critic score. That's the truth. That's how it works. User reviews are garbage, though. Look at the actual reasons for low user scores, and they have nothing to do with the actual game. Well, let's think about this. Can you give me an example of that? Yeah, because I think that there's a part of what you're saying that's true, but I think that you're wrong. I think it depends. No. The user score is bullshit? No, it's not. Why is it bullshit? Yeah, that's fine. You're saying it's bullshit, but why? Mostly Steam reviews? If you want to say Steam reviews are more credible because they're only people that have purchased the game, then I would agree with you. But I still think that user scores are still more credible than critic scores. People posting low reviews because the company does something they disagree with, like microtransactions. And what about that do you think makes it an unfair review? Why is that unfair? Definitely more credible than critic, but still shit in my opinion. Well, no, why is it unfair for somebody to do that? Both are not credible for different reasons, pointless. That's not true. I think that that's completely credible. I don't know, for me, I review the game itself, not the microtransactions in it, the business practices, or anything else, especially the game. So, you don't think that, for example, Lost Ark being pay to win should have... You think Lost Ark being pay to win has nothing to do with the game? Like, you don't think that a user should factor that in at all? So, like, if somebody says, I like Lost Ark, but I think it's pay to win, so I don't want to play it, you think that's invalid? How does this work? It means the horse and not the gear? Well, it doesn't matter what I mean, right? At the end of the day, if there's a lot of people who think that a microtransaction or anything that a company does, never played that game to be honest, to be sure, but I've never really been bothered by microtransactions as games in a whole. So then you think that... So that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to listen to that. But why is it so? But you think that it's problematic that other people think that it's an issue? Because I think that you're right. Like, there are a lot of games that have I play Honkai Star Rail, or I haven't played it for a long time, but I used to play Honkai Star Rail a lot. And so, like, you type something else. I grind shit out. If people want to buy something, go ahead. Doesn't really change my enjoyment of the game. Yes, it does, actually. So let me explain how it changes your enjoyment of the game. So the way that games are designed that have stores in them is that they're designed with convenience features because the game is designed to be inconvenient without those features. So a good example of that is like different types of rested systems or resin systems or energy systems in gacha games. So what ends up happening is that you have video games that put artificial limitations and different types of ankle weights on your character, for you, the player, to spend money on the store in order to remove those ankle weights. And I can give you a lot of examples of this if you want, but I think that it makes sense that if you provide a financial incentive for a game to be inconvenient, it will then become more inconvenient. And I think that if you compare the acquisition methods of getting certain items in, let's say, Monster Hunter or Elden Ring, for example, and you compare that to a live service game that has 1% drop chances, or you have to buy them on the store, or you have to spend money in order to get something that increases your probability of getting it massively, all of these things do affect you as a player. They don't directly affect you, but the game is altered in a way that makes it less fulfilling and more grindy for you because of those things existing on the store. Because you understand how when you put a convenience feature in the game, in a store, you then create a profit incentive to make the base game without that feature inconvenient. Do you understand what I'm saying? A lot of us have zero issue grinding things out in the game. Okay, let me take a step back. Let me think about this a bit more. He doesn't get it? No, I know. I'm just trying to think of a good way to say it. So let's say you had to grind for something that took you 10 hours. And then they changed the acquisition method of it. And now it would take you 100 hours to grind for it. But you could buy it in the store instead. And it would save you a ton of time. Would that bother you or not? Totally PoE did that with their tabs. The tabs are completely different. Yeah, would that bother you or not? Yeah, that would be bullshit at that point, sure. Okay, so then microtransactions are bad, and then you do agree that they are completely credible to review a game badly on. What you're saying is that other people's line isn't your line. And so you have drawn an arbitrary line of where you think microtransactions are good and bad. Well, guess what? Every other reviewer does the same thing. It's not like reviewers don't take microtransactions into consideration. Of course they do too. And it's the same as users do. So if a lot of users think something is bad, then the odds are that a user looking at the review will also think that it's bad because the majority of people that are looking at the game don't like it. It's just the simplest logic that you can possibly apply. So absolutely every single review is valid. And even if you're reviewing based off of, no, I would change, it would be the change to 100 hours of grinding that I'm rejecting. Here's what you're not understanding, is that the games that have 100 hours of grinding have it in it from the beginning because the game was changed in order to make it rewarding for you to spend money. I have it on very good authority that Diablo Immortal was actually not pay to win in the beta, and they changed it to be pay to win very, very late in the game, and they totally changed the entire DNA of the game in order to make it worse, in order to make people spend money on the game. So I think Diablo Immortal, but you didn't know that because you didn't play that version of the game. And that's what I'm saying, is that the microtransactions that exist in these games as convenience features are actually so corrosive that you don't realize their effect because the game exists with them being built into its DNA. That's how it works. That's how pay-to-win games work. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, like, you're drawing an arbitrary line of, like, where you think, like, somebody else could not care about it the way that you care about it, or somebody else would care about it more. So I don't think that it's fair for you to invalidate people's reviews because of things that you don't care about. I think that obviously you have to look at a collective of people and then make a decision off of that. I think there's a lot of games that all of us have liked that were generally reviewed badly. And liking a game that's not popular doesn't make you stupid. But at the same time, the people that are reviewing it have every right to express the fact that they're unsatisfied with the product. I'll look at one more and then I'll move on. Okay, yeah, it's pretty much not typing anymore. That's fine.